I'm a low-tier Omega. Yet, I was 100% match with Steve, the heir to the Wilson Empire. After we got married, he put away his playboy ways and treated me with wholehearted devotion. That was until a month ago when Steve got bound to a romance system. His target? His childhood friend, Jackson. He let Jackson swap out my medication. It caused my condition to flare up again, nearly costing me my scent gland. But afterward, he just sighed. I'm bound to the system. If I don't play along with him, my progress will get stuck. He just lost his spouse and needs security. The moment I complete the mission, I'll leave him. I looked at the affection stats in front of me and smiled bitterly. He forgot that I'm a player too, and I came here to romance him. The moment his progress with Jackson hits 100%, my mission will fail, and I'll go back to my original world. The anesthesia hadn't fully worn off yet. I was dragged awake by the tearing pain in my scent gland. Beside the hospital bed, Steve was gripping my hand tightly. I vaguely remembered what happened before I hit the floor after taking my meds. I saw Jackson standing there, gloating. I saw Steve reach out to catch me, only to pull his hands back. That look of helplessness in his eyes. He clearly knew about Jackson's scheme, yet he still let him switch my pills. The drug interaction sent me into shock. My gland had gone under the knife again. I struggled to pull my hand away. There were scrapes on my arm, and a dull ache throbbed in my chest. He sensed me moving. He slowly woke up and grabbed my hand again. Julian, you're finally awake. I didn't look at him, just gave a soft He asked cautiously, testing the waters. Are you still angry? I didn't say a word. I just turned my back to him. I exposed my scarred gland to him. During this surgery, I clearly heard what the doctor said. If I'd arrived any later, my gland would have been destroyed. And at that moment, Jackson had stood by the side, clicking his tongue impatiently. If I'd known, I would have delayed it more. Destroyed would be better. My consciousness was heavy then, so I didn't quite catch Steve's answer. But I clearly saw the two of them hugging. I was on the brink of death, and my lawful husband was comforting the culprit. My blood boiled and I passed out completely. Steve looked at my gland, looking like he wanted to say something but stopping himself. I thought that after this, he'd finally see Jackson's true colors. But after a long silence, he just sighed deeply and spoke. I'm bound to the system. If I don't go along with him, the progress gets stuck. He just lost his husband. He needs security. Once I succeed in the mission, I'll kick him out immediately. He spoke with such self-righteousness. He pulled my blanket up, covering my ruined gland. As if by not seeing it, the damage ceased to exist. I gripped the blanket tight, tears flowing unbidden. I was just about to turn around and confront him, but his ringtone cut me off. Seeing how frantic he looked, I didn't need to guess. It was Jackson. He was close enough that I could hear Jackson screaming on the other end. Steve, I'm paying Julian back with my life. Then came the heavy splash of something hitting the water. Steve's face went pale, his whole body tensing up. He shouted into the phone. Don't do anything stupid. Jackson, I'm coming. I'm coming. Wait for me. He didn't even spare me a glance before rushing out. The hospital room fell instantly silent. Only the hum of the machines remained. Steve had probably long forgotten. The night we got our marriage license 3 years ago, I was bound to a system too. The system told me, host must romance Steve. When progress reaches 100%, you may leave this world. It was just that Steve treated me too well. So well that the progress bar stalled at 99%. I firmly believed he loved me deeply. Until he got a system too. Until he allowed Jackson to hurt me again and again. He was so busy romancing Jackson. He forgot that I was his romancer, too. I raised my hand and swiped the air. The long-lost system interface appeared, the text on it exceptionally clear. Target. Steve progress. 37%. I sucked in a breath. In just one short month, my progress had dropped from 99% to 37%. I closed my eyes, and the system's voice chimed. Host, your peak progress reached 99%. Rewards have been issued. Please check. I watched the panel in front of me begin to change. 2 new lines of text floated up. Link target. Steve's progress. 63% notice. For every 1% the linked progress rises. Host's progress decreases by 1%. When linked progress reaches 100%, Host triggers the world exit mechanism. I stared at that 63% for a long time, forcing a weak smile. Turns out love doesn't disappear. It just transfers. I closed the panel, shut my eyes, and buried my face in the pillow. It doesn't matter. He wants to romance Jackson? He wants to complete his system task? Let him. Every step his progress bar moves forward is just helping me gather the chips I need to leave. As one falls, the other rises. The day he gets Jackson's progress to 100% is the day I can leave for good. The nurse changed my dressing. I lay back down to rest. The numbers on the panel kept rolling. I didn't need to guess to know that right now, Steve had definitely saved Jackson from the water. Their relationship had taken another step forward. I closed my eyes, resting peacefully, until deep in the night, when my door suddenly opened. I'm a light sleeper. When I first arrived at the hospital, Steve had the room soundproofed inside and out. Even the door was padded. Unless someone shoved it open hard, it wouldn't have startled me awake. I sat up and looked over. I saw Steve holding Jackson in his arms, rushing in frantically. Both of them were soaked to the bone. Jackson seemed barely conscious. I stared at Steve, but he just placed Jackson onto my bed, forcing me to get off. The VIP suites are all full. This is a double room anyway. The nurse rolled in another bed. Just make do for now. Steve didn't even look at me as he called for the doctor to start emergency treatment. I didn't make a sound. I just quietly sat on the newly rolled-in cot. I asked the nurse to pull the curtain. I was just recovering. It didn't matter where I lay. Besides, at their current speed, I'd be going home in a few days anyway. I lay down. I heard Jackson cough up water, regaining consciousness. The doctors finished the rescue, the nurses cleaned up, and they all left the room. The room went instantly quiet. Just the two of them and me. Steve, I thought I was going to die, Jackson cried, gasping for breath. Steve comforted him for a long time, completely forgetting that his husband in name was lying right next to them. I buried my head in the pillow. My heart felt sour. After all, a month ago, the person Steve was comforting was me. Even if I just choked on water, he'd hold me and fuss over me. But now it was someone else. Maybe I moved too much because Jackson heard me. He asked in confusion, Steve, is there someone else in the room? Steve paused. But seeing I didn't react, he told him, no. Go to sleep. I'll transfer you to a single VIP room tomorrow. He coaxed Jackson to lie down. He pulled up a chair and sat beside him, telling him the bedtime stories he used to only tell me. I gradually lost consciousness and drifted into a dream. In the dream, I was 7 just after I had transmigrated here. Who would have thought that being an orphan in my original world would lead to being an orphan in this one too? Except at the start, I hadn't bound the system. I lived in a daze, feeling like I just changed locations to survive. Even when I was bullied, I didn't feel much pain. Until I met Steve. He had congenital pheromone disorder. He needed a 100% compatible Omega to soothe him. When I presented as an Omega at 15, he happened to be at the orphanage donating supplies. 2 100% compatible AO partners. We were instantly attracted by each other's scent. So I was taken to the Wilson mansion. I became his ward, his arranged fiancé. At first, he was playful and didn't want to be coerced by genetics. But I just followed him around, not saying a word. He silently accepted my presence. But after we became adults, his friends mocked me for being a mute. For the first time, he stood up and beat that friend until he landed in the hospital. He's not a mute, he's my fiancé. Steve turned and grabbed my hand, showing everyone in the crowd. Speak. Prove to them you aren't a mute. In that moment, emotions I'd held back for so long finally exploded. I screamed at the top of my lungs. I'm not a mute. I'm Julian, Steve's fiancé. I pulled myself out of the dream. Only then did I realize someone was hugging me from behind. Steve's breath was hitting the back of my neck, making the wound on my gland. I pushed his arm off my waist. I propped myself up and sat. What's wrong? He woke up because of me. His voice was soft, and his hand naturally went to hold my waist again. Jackson fell asleep. Can we go back to how we were? I didn't move. I just sat there, frozen with him, until Jackson's coughing came from the other bed. He was calling Steve's name in his sleep. His hands slapped and rustled against the sheets, searching. Steve let go of me, got up quickly, and grabbed Jackson's hand flailing in the air. I'm here. Do you feel sick? His hurried movement opened a slit in the curtain. Moonlight poured in, and I could clearly see their overlapping silhouettes. Jackson hugged Steve, sobbing quietly. He said he had a nightmare that Steve didn't want him anymore and drowned him in the sea. Steve just held him and rocked him gently. The two of them rocked onto the bed. A burst of sickly sweet citrus omega pheromones drifted over, followed by the familiar cedarwood alpha scent. The two intertwined, completely forgetting my existence. I couldn't hold back the nausea in my stomach any longer. I scrambled out the door. The smell of disinfectant rushed into my nose along with the cold air. It felt like my respiratory tract was burning. But what was worse was my gland. Permanently marked by Steve, it was now reacting to his alpha pheromones mixing with another omega. It became abnormally agitated. I trembled all over from the pain. I used the wall for support as I walked down the corridor, not knowing where I was going, until a searing, burning pain radiated from the back of my neck. I reached back to touch it. My fingertips came away wet. Fluid mixed with blood was seeping out. My vision went white. The sounds in my ears grew fuzzy. Only that bone-deep pain kept amplifying, spreading down my spine to my whole body. My legs lost strength, and I slammed heavily onto the floor. Before my consciousness sank into darkness, I saw nurses rushing toward me. When I opened my eyes again, I saw Steve pacing anxiously in the room. He had dark circles under his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept all night, and his progress bar hadn't changed. Evidently, after seeing me run out, he hadn't continued with Jackson. Julian, how do you feel? Does the gland still hurt? As he spoke, he slapped himself hard across the face. His voice trembled with repentance. I'm really a piece of trash. I knew you were sick, and but don't worry, I'll stay with you all day today. He spoke hoarsely, straining his voice. But I just turned my face away, not looking at him. He froze, then, as if making a decision, he dropped to his knees with a thud. Julian, I have no choice. He looked up at me, his eyes red. Just wait a little longer. Okay? I'm almost successful. When I'll wish for the system to give you a high-level gland, okay? Please just wait, it's just a little bit more. Saying that, he knee-walked to my bedside, grabbed my hand, and promised repeatedly. Will love you forever. Really, in this life, I only love you. I won't fall for anyone else. I listened quietly, my gaze landing on my system panel. Target. Steve progress. 11%. That pathetic progress value easily exposed his heart. I suddenly laughed out loud. In the empty hospital room, it sounded incredibly harsh. Steve froze, then rushed up to hug me. But I pushed him away and spoke with utter calm. Okay, Steve, I'll wait for you to love me. By the time you fall in love with me again, I'll have long since returned to my own world. Steve let out a breath of relief and reached out to hug me again. This time I didn't refuse. I let him hold me tight, as if he was afraid I'd disappear the next second. Julian, wait for me, wait for me. The tenderness lasted only a moment. The door was violently shoved open. Jackson burst in, his face streaked with tears. He looked like he'd lost his mind. Julian, he glared at me, screaming. Almost instantly, Steve let go of me. His movement was so fast, like he was trying to distance himself from something. He turned to face Jackson. His tone softened. Why aren't you resting? Why did you come here? He put his arm around Jackson's shoulder. Be good, don't cause a scene. Me? Cause a scene? Jackson looked at him in disbelief. Suddenly, he broke free from Steve and charged at me. Before I could react, he raised his hand and ripped out my foreline. The needle was yanked straight out of my skin. The pain stole my voice. I didn't even have the strength to press the call button. Instinctively, I looked at Steve and rasped out, "Call the nurse." But the alpha who had been so heartbroken for me just moments ago was now holding another omega. Steve just frowned at me, then looked away, gently patting Jackson's back. Feel better now? Feel better? I froze. Does he rely on hurting me to romance Jackson? Blood surged, adrenaline spiked. I don't know where the strength came from. I forced myself off the bed and slapped Steve hard across the face. And while Jackson was stunned, I backhanded him across the face too. The handprints swelled instantly. One on the left, one on the right. Perfectly symmetrical. Nurses heard the commotion and rushed in. Jackson finally snapped out of it. He reached out to claw at my face. But Steve grabbed his shoulder. "Get out." I growled weakly as the nurses helped me back onto the bed. Steve took Jackson and left, looking helpless. Jackson's screams echoed down the entire corridor. "Julian, just you wait. I want you dead." But I had already made peace with it. Fine. I'm waiting to die. A few days of peace passed. No one came to bother me. The wound on my neck had healed. The spot on my hand where the 4 was ripped out had scabbed over. I lay in the hospital bed, feeling strangely heavy that evening. Hazily, someone touched my arm. "Patient Julian, you have a small exam to do." It was my attending doctor. I didn't have the strength to open my eyes, so I just mumbled an MHM. I let them move me onto a gurney. I felt them pushing me for a long time. I tried to wake up several times, but my consciousness seemed glued to the bed, until the pungent smell of disinfectant choked me. After a violent coughing fit, I finally opened my eyes completely. Bright surgical lights shone in my face. I was already lying on an operating table. I tried to sit up instinctively, only to find my joints had been strapped down. The surgical gown on me smelled awful. I struggled, looking at the doctor standing in front of me. I thought it was an exam? When was I scheduled for surgery? He didn't speak, until I saw a familiar figure enter from the door. Steve was wearing scrubs, but I could still see his expression. His eyes were scary red, tears swirling in them. If I wasn't the one tied down, he would have looked more like the victim than me. "Steve, what are you doing? Why am I tied up?" I was so angry my voice shook. He stood in front of me. Tears flowed freely. Jackson said. Steve choked on his words. He said he won't allow you to have my permanent mark like he does. Only if you wash off the mark will he be able to fully love me. "Julian, I have no choice. You know I'm not doing this to hurt you on purpose." His tears fell on the back of my hand. They were hot, but the chill of the operating room froze them quickly. I scoffed, looking sideways at him. "My gland can't take any more damage. Do you want me to die?" He grabbed my hand, telling me earnestly. The doctor said, removing. "The mark won't hurt the gland. Really, trust me. I'll be right here watching you. Nothing will happen." Then he began releasing pheromones to soothe me. Steve's progress bar on the panel had hit 97%. I stopped struggling and let the anesthesia needle pierce my skin. My eyelids grew heavier and heavier. Steve's blurry face swayed before my eyes. He was still saying I'm sorry, but his voice was getting further away, so far that I couldn't hear it clearly anymore, and I lost consciousness completely. In the darkness, a voice told me, "Just wait a little longer. Soon you can go home." From the moment the mark was removed until I was discharged, Jackson didn't bother me. Steve visited less and less, and the phrase he repeated most was, "Just wait a little longer." Wait, I am waiting. I'm waiting to go home. The day I was discharged, Steve wanted to move me to a quiet villa. I refused. If there was anything in this world I still cared about, it was the kids at the orphanage. After all, in the year Steve and I were married, we had been funding the place. Going there? That's fine too. Go relax for a bit and I'll come pick you up. I gave a soft MHM and got in the car. Inside the orphanage gates, the heavy atmosphere of the hospital finally vanished. The moment I got out of the car, a group of children swarmed me, calling "Big brother, big brother." I picked up the smallest one and walked inside. I told the director I wanted to stay for a while. He had worked here for half his life. He basically watched me grow up. Trouble in paradise? I shook my head. When the Wilson family first wanted to take me away, he was the first to object. It was only when Grandfather Wilson personally vouched for me that he stamped the adoption agreement. Just here to relax. He didn't know about Jackson. After all, to the outside world, Steve and I were still a model couple. Calling us childhood sweethearts wouldn't be a stretch. Seeing I didn't want to talk, he didn't pry. "All right then. Staying for a while is good. The kids miss you." I nodded and settled into the orphanage. With nothing else to do, I taught the kids reading and told them stories. Life was incredibly peaceful. The children's sweet smiles gradually washed away my pain. After removing the mark, this was the first time I felt my heart being filled again. I stayed for nearly a month. Every day was happy. Occasionally, I would open the system panel. Steve's progress had started crawling, recently stuck at 99%. But I couldn't be bothered to look anymore. This was fine. Even when I truly went home, I'd be alone. Here, at least I had the kids. I gradually forgot the system, forgot Steve. Until the morning of the winter solstice. I was busy making dumplings for the kids. Steve called. Julian. His voice was hoarse, exceptionally exhausted, pleading. Can you come back? If you have something to say it. I calmly pinched a dumpling shut and slid it into the pot. He paused, then stopped speaking in riddles. His voice sounded helpless, choking back a sob. Jackson has gland cancer. Stage 4. The doctor says he doesn't have much time. I chuckled lightly. Are you calling to give me the good news? Julian. His tone carried a hint of blame. But quickly he begged humbly again. Can you donate your gland to him? Before I could object, he started making excuses. Don't worry, once I complete the romance, I'll definitely replace yours with a high-level gland. Jackson said he wants to be a 100% match with me. It's his last wish. This way he can belong to me completely. I dropped another dumpling into the pot and suddenly laughed. My gland? I felt the ruined gland on my neck, the deep scar still remaining from the surgery to remove the mark. A low-level, crippled gland? Jackson wants that? It doesn't matter. Steve responded urgently. He said as long as it's a 100% match with me, he can fully fall in love with me. Julian, for the sake of all these years, help me. I didn't speak, feeling a mix of emotions. It was true he treated me well all those years, but it was also true that he hurt me. As I was thinking, the system panel suddenly popped up. A sentence floated on it. Final mission. Fulfill Steve's wish to return home immediately. Home. The word pricked me gently like a needle. The children in the yard were chasing each other, playing. The peaceful scene almost made me forget that I didn't belong here. Okay. I gave him my answer softly. Then I started scooping out the dumplings. Steve let out a huge sigh of relief on the other end. He said words of thanks. He made empty promises, but I tuned them all out. I hung up the phone. I shouted to the kids running wild in the yard. Dinner's ready. They ran over like a stampede. Only then did I notice a kid squatting in the corner of the kitchen. I washed my hands and brought him a bowl of dumplings. When did you get here? I didn't even see you. His eyes were bright, but he was covered in dirt. Clearly, he didn't fit in well. Teacher, are you leaving? It seemed he heard my phone call. I didn't want to hide it from him. I smiled and touched his cheek. Yeah, teacher is going home. Home. I can finally go home. Let those unbearable memories be like the wrong answers on the kids' homework. Tear them up and throw them in the trash. The familiar black sedan was parked at the orphanage gate. I didn't wake the kids. I just said goodbye to the director. I walked out of the compound. The sky was overcast, drizzling with light rain. Steve stood by the hood of the car holding an umbrella. Seeing me, he stubbed out a half-smoked cigarette. He hurried over to shield me with the umbrella. He took my luggage. Get in. I sat directly in the passenger seat, only to find his dashboard had changed. Even a wedding photo was set up there. But it wasn't ours. It was him and Jackson. Seeing me staring, he reached out and took the photo down. Jackson insisted on taking it. You know how he is. I know. Cut him off. Without a trace of emotion. I'd heard lines like that until my ears bled. The car started. He habitually reached over to help me with my seatbelt, but I turned my body to dodge him. The car was incredibly quiet. Only the sound of the AC vent blowing. He didn't push it. He just drove, changing the subject. Living at the orphanage wasn't good, was it? You look like you lost a lot of weight. Really? When I was discharged, I had lost nearly 30 pounds. I gained over 10 back at the orphanage. What do you think? He scratched his head awkwardly. Sorry, I didn't notice. I turned to look at my reflection in the window, sneering internally. For nearly half a year, he had never looked at me. The only phone call was to ask me to donate my gland to Jackson. The Steve who used to care about me ceased to exist long ago. Don't worry. After the surgery, I'll look for a gland for you nationwide. If I can't find one, I'll make the system give you a high-level one. I'll cure you. I won't let you be. No need. I interrupted him, my voice light. It's not necessary. He didn't speak again, but he pulled the car over to the side of the road. I paused, turning to ask him, "What are you doing?" He suddenly leaned over, closing in on me. His right hand cupped the back of my head. A kiss carrying the scent of cedarwood was about to land. I immediately turned my head to dodge it. I slapped him hard. "What are you doing? Don't touch me." The air froze. His movement stalled in mid-air. His eyes were full of disbelief. "Julian, there are issues in our relationship, but don't worry. I'll fix everything." He sat back straight and gripped the steering wheel. The whole way, I was on edge, terrified he would try to force me. Fortunately, in his heart, Jackson's situation was still the priority. When we arrived at the hospital, I was sent for checks. The doctor held up my scans and said I recovered well. Surgery could be scheduled soon. I changed into a hospital gown and sat quietly on the bed. Steve stood guard by my window, almost never leaving my side. Several times he looked like he wanted to speak but swallowed the words back down. I knew what he wanted to say. Nothing more than, "Just wait a little longer. Wait for the romance to finish. Just suffer a little longer. It's almost over, almost over." These expired words, even he knew they didn't work anymore. Being stared at was unnerving. I looked at him and spoke. "I won't run. Please get out." He waved his hands hurriedly, saying that wasn't what he meant. Then he grabbed my hand. There seemed to be confusion in his eyes as he asked me, "Julian, am I doing the wrong thing?" I didn't speak. He continued quickly, "Actually, I don't lack anything. I didn't need to romance Jackson. Why did it come to this?" He lowered his head, gripping my hand deathly tight, until it was time for surgery. The doctor came in to check on me and had me moved to the gurney. On the way, he grabbed the doctor and asked again and again, "Does removing the gland carry life-threatening risks?" After getting the answer that the risk was minimal, he looked at me, then at the unconscious Jackson nearby. He still let go of my hand. "We've come this far, Julian. Just bear it a little longer." I was wheeled through the doors. The anesthesia needle pierced my gland. I finally let out a sigh of relief. Good. In the end, he didn't choose me. During the operation, I didn't feel much discomfort. Until my gland was completely removed. Massive hemorrhaging began inside the cavity. I could feel it all clearly. I understood this was the ending the system arranged for me. The doctors were frantic, unable to find the bleeding point no matter what they did. Not until my gland was sutured into the back of Jackson's neck. A line of text appeared on the system panel. "Congratulations, host. Returning to original world." The electrocardiogram flatlined completely. Any rescue measures became powerless in this moment. I felt my soul being pulled away. In the instant I left, I saw Steve sprinting toward me desperately, then slipping on my blood, slamming heavily onto the floor in front of the operating table. Everything went black, but I felt incredibly free. "Steve, goodbye forever." I woke up on a sofa. Unfamiliar room, unfamiliar decor. I wasn't the child waiting for adoption in that dilapidated orphanage anymore. I looked at the time. It was already 2026. The flow of time was the same as the world I traveled to. I was 20 years old now, too. While I was confused, the sounds of pots and pans clanging came from the kitchen. A tall, thin woman ran out, covered in soot. She looked like she'd been through a war zone. "Julian, Julian, quick, get me my meds. It hurts like hell." She was rinsing her hand in the bathroom. I stared at her back, looking more and more familiar, until she saw I wasn't moving and turned to look at me. Only then did I see her face clearly. That face I thought I would never see again in any lifetime. She was right there in front of me. Except for fine lines at the corners of her eyes, she was as beautiful as ever. Mom. I walked toward her, not daring to blink, afraid that if I blinked, she would be gone, just like when I was 6, taken by cancer. I got close. She pouted and flicked water onto my face. "I told you to get my meds. Are you asking for a beating?" But seeing my tears fall, she suddenly softened. "Mom." I couldn't hold back anymore and hugged her. I hugged her warmth. I wailed, pouring out all my grievances and longing in that moment. She froze. She hurriedly dried her hands and stroked my back. "Oh, my son, what's wrong? You've never worried about your mom this much before." The unique scent of mom. It was smoothing over the scars on my soul. I cried until I couldn't breathe, practically wrapping my whole body around her. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. She pushed me away with a look of slight disgust. Did you have a nightmare or something? Wailing like a banshee. Go find your old mother. Her medicine. I reluctantly took my eyes off her face. As I turned around, a flood of memories surged into my mind. Mom beat cancer. Dad didn't spiral into alcoholism and die in a car crash after losing the love of his life. From that moment on, my family got better and better. Dad even started his own company and was quite successful. Following the memories, I found the first aid kit and pulled my mom onto the sofa. I carefully applied the ointment for her. This time it was her turn to cry. Stupid brat, you finally learned to care about your old mother. I promised her solemnly. Mom, I promise I won't make you angry anymore. I will love you forever. Her tears fell like broken beads, smashing onto my heart one by one. I held her and rocked her gently. Just then, a tall figure stood behind us. Well, a touching scene of mother and son. Never seen that before. The man grinned, showing all his teeth, a smile as bright as day. He took off his suit jacket. Gone was the emaciated, haggard look from my memories. He had even gained quite a bit of weight. A beer belly was protruding. Dad, I whispered. He looked at me suspiciously and draped his arm over my shoulder. Spit it out. What do you want? Daddy will buy it for you. But no airplanes or cannons. I wrapped one arm around his neck and the other around my mom's shoulder, crying until I almost lost my voice. I had a terrible dream. I thought I'd never see you guys again. I missed you so much, Mom, Dad. Never leave me in this life, okay? My mom furrowed her brow, whispering to my dad that I might be possessed. My dad's face turned red, but he looked like he was enjoying it, as if he'd never been this close to me before. As long as you want, the three of us will be together forever. I nodded heavily. My mom suddenly jumped up. That won't do, he still has to find a wife. I froze, slowly pulling away from my dad's embrace. How do I tell them I like men? Whatever. Future problems for the future. The system said this was compensation for everything I suffered. Corrected my fate. I was no longer an orphan. I was very grateful to it. And it wasn't as cold as it had been in that other world. It sounded more human. My mission is complete too. Before I go, I can take you to see what Steve looks like now. Do you want to go? I shook my head almost instinctively. He sighed softly. It's pretty miserable, you know. Very satisfying to watch. Thinking I had nothing else to do, I agreed. After all, I had never seen what a high and mighty young master looked like when he fell into the mud. Vision shifted, and I was floating in midair. Below me was an endless ocean. The salty sea breeze hit my face, making me feel weightless. Following the system's guidance, I floated closer. I saw Steve sitting by the sea. His clothes were still stained with blood. His hair was messy, his eyes hollow. In his arms, he held an exquisite urn. I floated beside him. His fingertips rubbed over the raised lettering. My name. Julian, I was wrong. Will you come back? He murmured repeatedly, looking into the distance. I followed his gaze. Only then did I realize there was a person in the sea. Hands tied, bobbing up and down in the water, struggling. At that depth, he wouldn't drown immediately, but he was suffering every second. I drifted closer for a look. It was Jackson. The damage from the illness hadn't vanished. He had been soaking in the water for who knows how long. His eyes were starting to lose focus. Steve, save me, he screamed hoarsely, issuing a final plea for help. But Steve acted like he didn't hear him, shifting his gaze away. He opened the system panel in front of him. System. His voice was raspy, carrying a plea bordering on collapse. I beg you, my wish is for Julian to come back. Give him back to me. Please. There was no sound in the air. Only a line of black text floating on the panel. Wish target is deceased. Cannot reverse. Why? He stood up, stumbling backward. He said he'd wait for me. Wait for me to love him. He said he'd wait. Tears streaked his face. He suddenly pulled the corners of his mouth into a smile. That smile was uglier than crying. Steve bent down, carefully placing my urn on the reef. He turned and charged into the sea. He grabbed Jackson like a madman. It's all because of you. He punched Jackson in the face, water splashing everywhere. You forced him. You killed him. Why isn't it you who died? You're the one who should be dead. Jackson was beaten until he couldn't fight back. He couldn't even utter a plea for mercy. Only when he closed his eyes completely did Steve stop and drag him onto the shore. He picked up the self-defense knife he always carried. "You're not worthy." He stared at the back of Jackson's neck, his gaze vicious. "You don't deserve to use his gland." The blade plunged violently into Jackson's gland cavity. Jackson twitched violently once. As the flesh was cut away, he ceased breathing completely. Steve held the excised gland in his hand. "That used to be a part of me." Right now in his palm, it was just a lump of dead meat. He walked back to the reef step by step, opening my urn. He placed the flesh and blood inside and sealed it tight. His movements were gentle, as if handling a rare treasure. "Julian." He picked up the urn again and turned toward the deep sea. The seawater covered his waist, chest, shoulders. "I'm coming to be with you." In the wind, I seemed to hear him whisper, "This time, it's my turn to wait for you." The waves grew larger, finally swallowing his body. I floated in midair, watching the sea surface return to calm. The wind stopped. The system said its final goodbyes and sent me home. I lay in bed, 1,000 thoughts in my mind, until my mom suddenly entered the room and threw open my curtains. "What time is it?" "Still sleeping. Get up and eat." The aroma of food hooked me. I grinned and climbed out of bed, regardless of the past. Right now, my happiness is just beginning.